In Washington, D.C. in 1965, Bernard is warned to be careful because some people want to make an example out of him. He gets ready to testify before a committee. His story goes back to Texas in 1939. As a child, Bernard works as a shoe shiner outside a bank where he listens to customers talk about money and real estate. After they leave, he writes everything he heard in his notebook. One day, he tries to learn more by standing at a window to watch a meeting inside the bank, but a police officer catches him and pulls him away. Bernard runs and manages to escape, but the officer promises that his father will hear about it. That night, Bernard's father scolds him for spying on white people and reminds him how dangerous that can be, explaining that black men have been killed for far less. He sees Bernard's notebook and admits Bernard is very smart, but also warns him that white men will never allow him to make money. Bernard refuses to believe that and is determined to become rich one day. In Los Angeles in 1954, Bernard is now a grown man with a wife named Eunice, and they have a son. They visit Eunice's family, where her uncle mentions that an aircraft company is hiring black workers. Bernard turns it down because he wants to make money through real estate. His goal is to own property and earn rent. Since he and his family are living in a small shed behind the uncle's house, the uncle becomes upset and accuses Bernard of refusing to work. After dinner, Eunice tells her uncle that Bernard is a genius and that things will get better soon. She then joins Bernard in the shed, where he promises to move them out as soon as he can. The next day, Bernard drives Tony, who is Eunice's cousin, to work. Tony's friend Matt admires Bernard's car and assumes he is wealthy, so Tony tells him Bernard owns buildings. Later, Bernard visits several buildings in a white neighborhood, carefully checking their condition and prices. He tells Eunice he has found the perfect building, but buying it will leave them with no money for repairs. Eunice thinks they need an investor and takes Bernard to meet Joe, her former employer. Joe is relaxed and jokes around, which makes Bernard think he is not serious, so he refuses to work with him. As they leave, they see the governor visiting Joe because they are friends, but this still does not change Bernard's mind. Sometime later, Bernard meets with Patrick, the owner of the building he wants to buy. Bernard asks him to loan him $10,000 for renovations if he buys the property, but Patrick refuses. He explains it with some calculations, but his math is wrong, and Bernard corrects him. Patrick is impressed, but still refuses to loan him the money. Before leaving, Bernard notices a calendar from Reed at Mid-City Bank. He goes to that bank and asks for Reed, but the secretary says Reed is unavailable, even though Bernard can see him through the office window. Bernard realizes he is being turned away because of his race, so he waits outside. When Reed leaves work, Bernard stops him and explains a business idea that would benefit both Reed and Patrick. That night, Bernard tells Eunice he did not get the loan. Then Patrick calls, saying he heard Bernard used his name to speak to Reed. Patrick asks if Bernard thinks that follows normal business rules, and Bernard says it does not. Patrick likes people who work outside normal rules, so he tells Bernard he can go to the bank in the morning for the loan and that he will be the guarantor. Later, Bernard and Eunice celebrate at a club. Joe approaches them and keeps teasing Bernard, which makes Bernard like him even less. The next day, Bernard and Tony begin renovations. One tenant complains because she sees black men working in a white neighborhood. Bernard tells her he owns the building, but she does not believe him. Matt arrives to help, and Bernard asks if he is fine working for a black man. Matt says he only cares about money. The three of them work hard through the day. Two police officers show up because the old woman filed a report, but Bernard shows them the paperwork that proves he is the new owner, and they leave. After the renovations are finished, Bernard moves his family into one of the apartments. The old tenant sees them and moves out the next morning because she refuses to live next to a black family. Soon, more black families ask to rent the apartments, and the building is completely leased in only a few days. Patrick is impressed and asks Bernard to be his business partner. Bernard will choose the buildings, and Patrick will act as the public face to avoid racial issues. They agree to split everything evenly. In the weeks that follow, their business grows fast. Bernard finds new properties. Matt and Tony handle renovations, and Eunice chooses the decorations. One day, Bernard surprises Eunice by showing her a large house that will be their new home. Sometime later, Patrick is found dead in his bed. After the funeral, Patrick's wife says she wants to end the business and offers Bernard only a quarter of the money. Bernard objects because he is supposed to own half, but since his name is not on any documents, he must accept this or get nothing. The lawyer tells Bernard he needs a witness to prove the real agreement. Bernard goes to the bank to talk to Reed, but Reed refuses to see him. On his way out of the bank, Bernard notices a sign that makes him realize how much space the bank needs. He goes to see Joe and explains an idea. They should work together to buy the building used by several bankers. If they own the property, none of the banks renting space there will be able to refuse them loans. That would allow them to buy even more buildings. Joe likes the idea but thinks no one will sell to black men, so they ask Matt to act as the face of the business. Matt is unsure because he knows nothing about banking or real estate, and he leaves even after they promise to guide him. Later, Matt goes to a diner, still nervous about the idea. The waitress, Susie, asks if he is all right, so he explains he is thinking about taking a job in real estate. Susie is impressed, and that gives him confidence. He rushes back to Bernard and Joe to take the job. The first step in training him is teaching him how to talk to wealthy people. Joe makes them go to the golf course at 6 in the morning to learn the game. They are soon joined by Joe's banker friend, Donald, who agrees to lend them $2 million. Bernard assures him they will get the building for less. Next, Bernard teaches Matt all the calculations needed, even though math is not Matt's strong point. For the next few weeks, Matt practices hard. He struggles in the beginning, but grows more confident each day. He surprises everyone with a hole-in-one followed by a correct calculation. When he finally improves, he gets his first suit. Joe teaches him how to drink like a businessman, and Eunice teaches him dining etiquette. When Matt manages to solve a calculation in his head while playing golf, they decide he is ready. The next step is to handle the plan. The banker's building is owned by a man named Charles, who spends time at an exclusive country club. Joe arranges for Matt to enter as a guest. Joe pretends to be his driver to make Matt look wealthier. Matt uses his golf skills to impress everyone and manages to arrange a meeting with Charles in his office. For a full week, Joe and Bernard prepare him for the questions he might face. When the day arrives, Matt answers everything with ease. He memorizes all the numbers and pretends to calculate them on the spot. Charles agrees to sell the building for $1,560,000. After celebrating, the group begins redecorating the office. Their relationship with the bankers grows fast, and soon, they get the loans they need. They start buying many buildings in wealthy white neighborhoods. This financial success allows Matt to marry Susie. In only a few months, the three men become the biggest real estate businessmen in the state, and they even meet the vice president. A few years later, in 1963, Bernard returns to Texas with his family to visit his father. The old man is happy to see him and tells him he is proud. The next day, he walks with Bernard and explains why the fountains are still separated there. Bernard stops at the corner where he worked as a boy and asks the new shoe shiner to shine his shoes, but the man refuses because Bernard is black. Bernard looks at the bank where he learned everything and gets an idea. When he returns to Los Angeles, he tells Joe he wants to buy the bank in Texas. Joe says running a bank is complicated and will be even harder because Texans will not accept a black man in charge. Bernard explains that Matt can be the face again and that there is a large market of black customers who are never allowed to borrow money. After a long disagreement, Joe reluctantly accepts because he does not want to lose Bernard as a partner, even though he calls it a bad idea. Later, Donald helps Matt buy the Texas bank for Bernard and Joe. As part of the deal, the former owner and his son Robert keep a 20% share. Afterward, Bernard visits black communities in Texas to let them know the bank has changed its policies and now welcomes them. He also asks them to keep it quiet because racist people will not approve. All loans go through Bernard and Matt, and soon many black businesses begin to grow. After 3 months, Robert notices how many loans Matt is approving and wonders where all these new clients came from. Matt avoids answering. Robert becomes suspicious and starts following him. He sees Matt speaking with Bernard and secretly takes pictures. That night, Susie tells Matt she hates Texas and points out that he is only getting a salary even though he was promised a partnership. The next day, Robert goes to Bernard's house while he is having a meeting with Matt and Joe. He says he has no problem working for black men, but he fears that if locals find out, the bank will collapse. Then he shows them a letter from the United States Treasury Department announcing an inspection in 1 month because they received anonymous complaints about unsafe loans. After Robert leaves, Matt takes Bernard and Joe to look at a smaller bank because he has an idea. They can buy the small bank and let him run it. Then they can split the loans between the two banks to make the numbers look normal during the inspection. Joe and Bernard say they do not have enough experience to attempt something so risky. Matt responds that he will stop helping unless he becomes a partner. With no other option, they agree. Matt buys the small bank, and on the first day of work, Eunice pretends to be a cleaning lady so she can watch everything. Meanwhile, Tony drives Bernard around the town so they can decide which loans should go to each bank. That night they meet at a restaurant with Matt to finalize their plans, but their excitement fades when they see racist graffiti painted across the sign outside. The next day, Matt meets with a lawyer to sign all the required documents. Later, Robert calls Matt to warn him that several white customers want to withdraw all their money because they believe the bank is owned by a civil rights organization. That night, Bernard shows Joe the racist sign he found at the bank. He explains that 5 customers already pulled out their funds and that Robert convinced 9 others to stay. Joe believes Robert is the one who started the rumors. A few days later, a federal bank examiner arrives at the small bank to review the books, so Matt calls Bernard for help. Bernard worries because they would never allow a black man inside that meeting. Eunice tells him to pretend to be a servant, and when he refuses, she reminds him that she played that role many times to help their business. Bernard repeats that it is different because she is a woman, which frustrates her. She points out that this is the same unfair logic white people use against black communities. Realizing he is wrong, Bernard agrees to wear a uniform and pretend to be a cleaning man. He enters the bank and cleans near the door of Matt's office, using hand signals to guide him. But the examiner closes the door for privacy, blocking Bernard from helping any further. Bernard has no choice but to walk away. Inside the office, Matt grows nervous as the examiner uncovers several inconsistencies in the financial records. Pretending he needs to retrieve a file, Matt rushes to the bathroom, where Bernard and Joe try to advise him. When he returns to the office, the examiner has discovered multiple errors Matt cannot explain. Matt hurries back to the bathroom with the files. Bernard immediately spots the mistakes. Joe wonders how Donald could have missed such obvious issues, and Matt admits he used a different lawyer to speed things up. That lawyer was recommended by Robert, and Joe and Bernard realize Robert intended to ruin their operation from the start. That night, Bernard tells Eunice the outcome of the meeting. They must sell 27 bad loans and cover all the losses themselves, which will cost $300,000. Later, Bernard and Joe inform Matt they will not help him. They explain that men like them can face serious consequences if they get caught, and the small bank was Matt's idea, so it is his responsibility. The next morning, Donald calls Joe to say his bank bought all the loans from Matt. Joe and Bernard storm into Matt's office for an explanation. Matt says it is only temporary, so he can buy time to adjust more records. The duo reminds him that doing that is fraud. At that moment, agents from the Treasury Department arrive and announce that the bank has lost its license. They fire Matt immediately and order the customers to leave because the bank is closed until further notice. As Joe and Bernard step outside, FBI agents approach and arrest them without providing a reason. Bernard accuses them of racism and tries to resist, but they overpower him easily. Later in Washington, a lawyer informs Joe and Bernard that the state banking charges have been dropped, but federal charges are still active. A senator in Arkansas is holding hearings about weak oversight in banking, and the lawyer believes he wants to use their case to make a political point. This could help them get the federal charges dismissed. Meanwhile, Matt faces serious trouble with his own bank. Authorities offer him a deal. If he testifies against Bernard and Joe, his charges will be dropped. Days later, Matt appears in court and explains all their plans, claiming he was only an employee who was manipulated. Bernard is then offered 2 choices. He can admit to using relaxed rules to enrich himself, which will give Congress a reason to change those rules, and he will receive immunity. Or he can testify freely, and if the court finds any conflict between his statements and those from white witnesses, he will go to prison. After the hearing, Bernard walks with Eunice and confides in her. If he accepts immunity, he will never be able to expose the unfair treatment black citizens face in the banking system. Eunice tells him she will support him no matter what he decides. Before entering the courtroom again, Bernard meets Joe and they share a quiet moment, remembering their years of partnership. During his testimony, Bernard explains that the country claims all men are created equal, but the laws do not reflect that belief. Ignoring the warnings about losing immunity, he picks up the cleaning uniform and uses it as a symbol to explain that a man who cannot get a loan cannot start a business or buy a home. Without those opportunities, the American dream is out of reach. In the end, the government seizes Joe's and Bernard's assets and sentences them to 3 years in federal prison. They lose all their buildings, except one house that remains under Eunice's name. Robert buys the Texas bank for a very low cost. When Joe and Bernard are finally released, Eunice is confused by their laughter. They reveal that before Matt testified, he came to them in secret and admitted he would spend 50 years in prison if he refused to cooperate. Bernard and Joe agreed to let him testify, and in return, Matt secretly bought 2 houses for them in the Bahamas before the government could seize the money. Because of their testimony, in 1968, Congress passes the Fair Housing Act, making it illegal to refuse to sell or rent property based on race, religion, or gender. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more movie recaps. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think about this movie in the comments section.